The Magic doubled down on an identity that I don't think they should have.
Okay,
so we're down. We're down on the
yeah.
Magic's
I'm
offseason.
I'm
Oh, wow.
I'm here.
Down
I'm
on
with
the
this as
Magic's
well.
offseason.
This is very surprising.
Down on the Magic's offseason. I mean, look, basically the only thing that they did was go out and get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which I love. But at the end of the day, that is basically turning Gary Harris into better Gary Harris, right? I mean, that's kind of...
So
they brought back Gary Harris. And that's the other part of what they did, right, is they literally re-signed every single one of their players except for Joe Ingles. So they made one addition who is exactly the same archetype of a player they already had in their starting five, who did make their starting five a lot better when he was healthy. Gary Harris was like low-key important for them last year, so a better version of that is going to improve their team. But this is a team that doesn't have enough playmaking, that is putting so much on Paolo Banchero's shoulders in a role that I'm still not positive is actually the best one for him. We don't, have to turn every young player who can create a shot into the number one, heliocentric guy on their team every time that we get them. Franz Wagner, the extension might be an interesting discussion among us. I don't think we've covered any of those extensions, and that's been getting a lot of attention in the NBA. I don't hate it, but it locks you in again to what this team is going to be. It doesn't allow you to say, maybe we could, you still could trade Franz, but like maybe that's what we want to explore over the next year. Or what if we had him, but not at the absolute most we could pay him, and give ourselves some, have some foresight and give ourselves some flexibility down the line. Basically, this is just the same exact team that is going to have a very good defense, have a little bit more spacing, but still be missing the thing that they're going to need in order to ever be a championship contender. And they're getting good now, so they're not going to have a bunch of bites at the apple in the draft to go get another offensive creator. They spent their cap space. They're going to get expensive soon. Their window is tightening to take that leap, and they're really just betting on this model to take a leap internally, and I don't see the evidence that that's going to happen. I think they kind of blew it with that chance this summer.
I'm with this. I love this. This is where I am sort of at with the Magic as well. I saw like a article arguing that they were like won the NBA offseason, and I just did not understand that. I understand getting KCP is a great move, but they didn't. If you looked at what went wrong in the playoffs against the frankly like underwhelming Cavs team, couldn't score. And that starts with your league guys, and that starts with their growth, and it starts with where they have to get. And they're in the same space.
We got to decide if the Cavs were impressive or underwhelming in the playoffs, by the way. Because when it's Boston, it was like, well, they kind of beat a pretty interesting Cavs team. And then it's the Magic, it's like, well, they should have done a lot better against the Cavs.
I am firmly in the underwhelming camp. I want to be very clear about this. That's who will argue that they were interesting? That's a weird take.
I think they played Boston pretty competitively.
Yeah, I just think that's true. I just don't think they were ultimately that good. It's like you still lost in like 5 games, so it's like, what did you really accomplish?
Yeah.
Anyway,
but if Orlando had let their guys go, they could have made some external additions, and I think that there are some players who would have been interesting. And at least, you're not getting a game changer once you get KCP. It's not like you have another max slot or something, but sign and trade for Malik Monk or a player like that, call about Anthony Simons. Maybe they did. I don't know. But, why are they not poking around on those guys and instead giving Jonathan Isaac, a massive raise? It just was like, all right, we're good. We'll roll with this. Why?
Let me throw one other part of this in, too. They gave Franz the rookie extension, and I think, that was going to happen, right? But I've wondered why they couldn't wait on that a year and to maintain a little more flexibility, to give themselves a little bit more of a window. I think that is something that more teams could and should try to do when you have these rookie max guys, or maybe guys that are not quite max. You're going to pay them max. You want to keep your guy in house and do right by them and all that stuff. That's a thing that does happen. They couldn't have waited a year just to maintain a little more flexibility and give themselves a little more runway to make some kind of move if they needed to. I think that's the other part of this that I wondered why they felt like they had to do that right now.
So I disagree with both of you. I love the Magic's offseason. I thought it was incredibly prudent and showed a lot of patience. And I hear the names, Anthony Simons, Malik Monk, and I'm like, so? I don't think any of those guys are making this team a lot better, it does address an area of need. I'm not going to like they do need an on-ball creator, a guy who can make things easier for their best players. I would argue that they didn't need to do that now. And I still think that there's something to be said about putting the onus on Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, by the way, who they like a lot, to just get better in that department. Because we just saw Jason Tatum basically play point guard for the Celtics. They don't have a point guard. They have Derek White and Drew Holiday. I don't want the ball in their hands for a majority of any basketball game. I want the ball in Jason Tatum's hands. They're trying to get Paolo Banchero there. He's not there yet, but he was never supposed to be there yet. And they doubled down on their identity. Their identity got them to the playoffs last year after a bajillion years of not being in the playoffs. Like, that's a success, and now we're just going to ditch it? I kind of like what they did. And in terms of re-signing their own guys, this to me is the patient part that I really like. You have your bird rights on a lot of these guys, so you could sign them to some really interesting contracts. First of all, they did have enough cap space, and they got the best free agent available to them, which was KCP. That was going to be better than anybody else they could have signed. It was a guy that everybody wanted. They got him. He's exactly what fits their team. Brendon already said it. Gary Harris was ridiculously important to that team last year, and they just went out and got better Gary Harris, and then still have Gary Harris. So I like all of that. But they now have, by re-signing guys like Mo Wagner and Goga Batadze and all these guys, they have 6 guys, not including Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner this year, making between $7 million and like $12.9 and $13 million this year. 6 guys between $7 million and $13 million, chunky, tradable contracts. When that right shot creator, because I don't think Malik Monk is exactly right for them. I don't think Anthony Simons is exactly right for them. I think that this is a team that wants to be Boston Celtics Disney World, where they're going to say all 5 guys can defend at a credible level. That's what we want. And so I think they're going to be able to get there when that player comes available. They have all the chunky contracts. They still got a bunch of draft picks. Like, they're in a great position to make the move for the guy that they really want. I'm glad they didn't settle for the guy that sort of makes sense but doesn't necessarily make them better. I'm glad that they doubled down on everything that they did. I think this has been a really forward-looking, patient front office, and I'm glad they didn't overreact to one playoff series.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been an overreaction to one playoff series, though. I think it's really not like I hear you on the cap side of it. I mean, they're plenty flexible. Obviously, they don't have Zach LaVine on their books or anything egregious like other rebuilding teams sometimes get stuck with, or Ben Simmons in the Brooklyn situation, right? But so I don't think it's like some criminal thing that you're going to pay some of these guys. I think having Goga Bitadze at $8 million when you already have 2 other centers making 11, like, I can kind of pick nits in how some of it went about. Like, did you need to keep Gary Harris when you have the other thing is also, like, by doing that, they kind of feel like they blocked their other young guys, non-Franz and Paolo, from stepping into bigger roles. Like, is Anthony Black or Jet Howard or Tristan Da Silva, are they going to play? And kind of like, if not, why not? That's a question I have with some of that, but it's not that big of a deal. The thing is, for me, I do think it's a reasonable goal to get better next season. They lost in the first round. They were competitive. I don't think they're going to get further than that this year unless both Paolo and Franz take pretty significant leaps. And maybe that happens, especially for Paolo. I think it's much more likely. But then if you're banking on that, is the way to get that leap from him to keep putting the ball in his hands. And I think that can be one of the things you do, but you use the Jason Tatum comparison. Yeah, I guess you would say he played point guard, but he had a bunch of other guys who are also kind of point guards. They don't really have that. Franz can be that, but KCP's not that player. Jalen Suggs, we'll see. I feel optimistic. I still think ideally he's more of an off-ball player who can shoot and cut and, even crash the offensive glass as a guard and things like that. And then the centers are all either ball movers or shooters. So that's not really built in a way that makes sense. Maybe it's not Anthony Simons. Maybe it's not Malik Monk. Maybe that's a little too much in the direction of just like microwave guy. But I'm sure if we thought hard enough, we could find some player who could have been available by trade or free agency, even if they're not a great long-term starter, at least to start to build the type of roster that I think this one probably needs to look like, and they just didn't really do that. They had an imperfect roster, and they kind of kept it. That's the problem I have.
the guy that makes sense for them is like a DeJounte Murray, right? Like that sort of makes a little bit more sense for them.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have the stuff to go get DeJounte Murray, right? They would have had they didn't have those contracts. By signing all these guys to like 7, 8, $12 million deals, now they have those stackable contracts. I think the Magic would agree with everything that you're saying. And I think what they would respond is, yes,
wait.
And now we can. Now we can go do it. Where we
I hope
really
so,
do it before.
Because they've never really been a super aggressive trade team, you know. So
right. And to your point,
I hope
when
that
do they have to
I hope
open up
they
that
are
window?
now.
Yeah, I just think that it's more important for them to fully maximize. All right, what is it that Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs, if these are the three guys we're building around, maybe Jonathan Isaac is a part of that. I don't really know. Like, what can we do to fully maximize these guys before we start going out and adding a little bit like what Oklahoma City did, where they said, we know we're at a size deficit. We know there's holes on the roster, but we want to see this thing through for a couple of years to make sure that when we do make these big swings, that we're really that we're swinging at the right pitches, that we're doing the right thing here, and that we have our eye on the right ball. So I'm okay with it. I understand if people are like down on the Magic. I kind of like the patience approach from it.
I just want to see their name in every rumor about every available player for the next year, and that would make me feel a lot better. Even if they don't get one, I want to know they're trying.
Yeah,
the Danny Ainge approach.
Look,
Nice.
yeah, nice. You owe me, no jinx. I'll say this: 2 things could make me more confident in this working. We'll say 3 things. Number 1, if Paolo just fully like ascends to his max and whatever he can hit his potential, maybe some of this does solve itself. That's what I think. And Franz maybe shoots a little better in the regular season. Like some of that course corrects, you maybe hope that works. Number 2, I think stylistically, like modernizing the offense in some way is probably necessary. And, KCP will help with that. But too often last year, it was just Paolo feeling like he was having to do a bunch and just kind of lost in the wind a little bit, so to speak, and freelancing and trying to come up with something out of like weird looking sets. And there was like no structure. I think that's a team that needs some like Budenholzer-esque structure to just like make it work a little bit better. I think that is...
And spacing, to your point. KCP should hopefully help that. Yeah.
Number 3, to the point about trades. This just feels like a Wendell Carter Jr., what do you trade him for thing. You brought back Mo Wagner. You brought back Batatse. There's an argument to be made that like you just want that archetype of center for the 48 minutes, and you don't... The Wendell thing is kind of an imperfect fit. Maybe can you find a Wendell Carter trade, or at least use his salary as something bigger to make your team better? That's kind of what I'm looking. If they kind of level this up over time, Wes, to your point about patience, I could be talked into this.
Jamal Murray's an unrestricted free agent next summer until he signs this extension that still hasn't happened. So there we go.
We solved it.
Wrong Florida team.
Oh, sorry, my bad, Wes.
Is there a 31st team coming?
We're very close to my next Paul George isn't actually going to sign an extension with the Clippers take being proven absolutely right with this Jamal Murray situation.
It's weird.
I have it. There's some thumbtacks in the wall with some different printed pieces of paper that I'm starting to connect dots on here. I'm just letting you know. You can't see it because it's on this wall, but
I'm right
watch
there with
this
you.
space.
I'm right there with you.
That should just be like the easiest, like give the guy the max you can give him, like thing, to the point about keeping these things together. It's like that guy won you a title and he's perfectly paired with your franchise player, the best player in the league right now. Just like pay him and don't worry about it.